welcome to our latest episode of the Backroad here on In Between Media. It's our fantasy NASCAR series over here. My name's Elliot Hicks. I'm back with you as host this week, and we've got a good crew here. First off, we've got Jared Bakaysa back with us again. He's been a while, man. How you been?
Good. How you been? I haven't been on a show with you yet. This year.
This crazy season has it's really taken us that way. Then we have Villagmomez back with us. How's it going?
I'm wonderful, ready for some more outstanding racing that we've been treated to all season long.
Oh, it's certainly been a great season. And Rod, you know our guest very well. It's Cody Zeeb. You guys do a podcast together. Excited to have you on, Cody.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the invite. Always excited to talk about NASCAR. I'm ready to go.
So the season is in full swing. Let's look back on the most recent couple of races with our first segment, In the Rear View. I don't think you could pick out a wilder two races. We had Bristol Dirt and Talladega. Let's start with that dirt track. And, it had been so long since we'd seen it in the Cup Series. Second year, first night race on dirt. Quite an eventful one. The weather didn't exactly cooperate again, and it was quite the wild finish. Jared, I think we have to start with you here. Kyle Busch getting that win, backing into one a little bit in the final corner. What were your thoughts on Bristol?
Oh, it feels nice, right, Elliot? Backing in wins.
It really does. It really does.
It was a pretty good race. I mean, I didn't think that finish was even going to happen. I thought Reddick was going to pull away with that one, or didn't think that both the leaders would both wreck out there towards the end. I was thinking it would be more of a cleaner finish than that. But either way, I guess sneaking out a win and locking yourselves into the playoffs this early in the season is a pretty good bonus for me.
All right, we'll go with Rod next.
Nothing says next-gen racing on dirt than absolute chaos in the last turn and a half, right? I mean, this is what we've seen all season long. Just some fantastic finishes and really unpredictable racing. And I think nothing said it more than that last few feet at Bristol Dirt, where you thought you knew what was happening. And then sure as heck, the next thing that happens is something that you had no clue that was going to happen. So I loved it. I mean, to me, I loved Bristol Dirt last year. I think I loved it even more this year just because the visibility problems weren't there like they were last year. NASCAR addressed a lot of that stuff to make it a better race overall, and they did their job. So I was happy with it.
All right, Cody, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I did have Reddick 16-1 to win on our podcast. So that was sad in the final corner there. So close. I was already tasting that victory and swept away just like that. But, I mean, as far as Kyle Busch goes, a win is a win is a win. So take it any way you can get it. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a huge fan of the dirt. I loved it last year, same as Rod. I loved it even more this year. I think that there's a lot more. I mean, we're going to keep getting it going forward, so get used to it basically. But I think there's a lot more to come, and I think it's going to keep getting better. NASCAR's only got one race a year that's dirt. They can only do so much to improve. It was a new car. It ran. I mean, when's the time ever we've ran on an oval track in the rain, which they were able to do in that race. So, I mean, for the situation they were put in with the weather not exactly cooperating, I think they did a good job. Maybe it wasn't the best race, but it was still exciting, and an exciting finish can make up for a lot of more follow the leader race or that. So I liked it.
Yeah, the exciting finish and the fact that we were able to finish all of the race certainly helped a lot. With the weather delay and there was all this craziness about who's going where, how's this going to work with pit stops and not live pit stops. But if they could just get the weather right one year, I think that would help. There was bad weather both years. They made some steps incrementally to improve from year 1 to year 2, and they still have work to do year 2 to year 3. I feel bad for some of those Stewart Haas cars. Cole Custer, I believe he was on the pole. He had such a great run. Had to come down, clean off the grill. He and Almirola, and I believe Kevin Harvick also, all of them lost laps because of the way they did their screens and whatnot. They had to come down to pit, but then they didn't get their laps back when NASCAR said, all right, everybody bring them down. You'd think you reset everybody on an equal playing field. I thought that was kind of ridiculous. I wonder if you guys would agree with that. I would hope so. You know?
Yeah, I agree with that. I was like, come on now, like you're calling the caution because of these guys and letting them everyone else do what they were just doing. Like, come on.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably a little bit in their camp. It was only their cars that had the massive problems at the beginning. So they obviously didn't do something that other people did. Maybe didn't take that extra step. So a little bit on them. But if you're going to throw a caution for it, I'd say you probably just put them all back on the same playing field. But
you just
have
NASCAR can be. Harvick. You just don't have any sympathy for Harvick. I know. You can't get that past me.
You know me.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you put him at the back of the field, you know, that'd be better than leaving Cole Custer 2 or 3 laps down. It was just a little ridiculous. But as if the craziness of Bristol Dirt wasn't enough, then we went right to Talladega. The craziest thing for me at Dega was that stage 3 went caution-free. I'd already got the big ones out of the way, and it ended up being Ross Chastain getting his second win of the year. Typical Talladega mayhem, though, at the end there. Kind of everybody was everywhere. Thought Eric Jones won it, then he thought Larson won it. Ends up being Ross Chastain holding the bottom, driving it straight, and taking the win. What do you guys think about Talladega? Cody, let's start with you this time.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the whole caution-free final stage is absolutely incredible. I don't know if that's something to do with these new cars or if everybody just kind of got it out of the way early. We didn't really have a big one like we normally have. There was still some wrecks in that, but definitely a different race. I thought it was a good race. Seemed like passing was maybe a little tougher, but there was plenty of movement and shaking and baking throughout the field. Obviously, a great finish. I mean, just, an amazing finish. Ross Chastain kind of backed into one himself there, but again, a win is a win is a win, right? So I love super speedway racing. I'm glad we got 6 of them now if you throw in the Atlanta races. So I always have fun with those. It's a crapshoot. It's random, which makes it even more fun, I think. So I loved it.
Yeah,
anyone can jump in here. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I was waiting for you.
I thought we were just going.
What I loved is that you saw the absolute chaos in the beginning, right? It was everybody was passing everybody. It was double file forever. People were just all over the place at the very beginning. And then all of a sudden, you just saw it spread out. And they were like, you know what? Yeah. And once a couple of cautions happened, once some cars were getting taken out, cooler heads prevailed. And most of the second stage was kind of run at a okay, we're just not going to tear our cars up right now. We're going to save what we got. We're going to just kind of wait until the last few laps to really start to make some things happen. And I think we saw the race kind of take on different personalities at different points of the race. And it's kind of different than what we've seen before, where it's either all out madness or it's all out, 400 laps of just yawn. And then at the end, it kind of kicks up. But this had ebbs and flows, and it just was a lot of fun to watch that race sort of play out as the whole thing happened. And then, of course, at the very end, Ross Chastain just being there, doing what he needed to do to be there and get his win, which was an exciting way to finish and an exciting way to watch the last 200 feet. Again, we come down to a very, very last second win by a driver.
Yeah, I enjoyed the aspect. It wasn't really like a circus at the end, because like how many Talladega Daytona races have we had where there's like crash after crash after crash, and we're in like 5 overtimes, and you're just like, all right, let's just get this over with type of deal. It was kind of cool to see everyone actually like race clean this race, because you've seen previous Daytona Talladega races. There's going to be that one guy that's going to put an unnecessary block out there, wreck the whole field, and I didn't really see that this week at Talladega. So it was nice to see them actually like race somewhat clean. I mean, Kyle Larson kind of slamming Kurt Busch up into the wall at the last lap. I mean, that's kind of debatable there, but it is what it is. But yeah, Ross Chastain winning that race, like he didn't even move. He just stayed in his line and just let everyone else do it. And I think Eric Jones made the mistake of trying to go up with Larson, not realizing that if he would have just stayed low, he probably has that win in that 43 cars in victory lane. But shout out to Ross and Trackhouse this year. Trackhouse has more wins than 2311 Racing does in the last 2 years. So that's pretty good for that program. And I think with Ross Chastain getting this win this early, I mean, he won on a road course, won on a restrictor place. I mean, heck, he was like a couple instances away from winning 2 more races this year. So like, I think that it's maybe early, but I think we're looking at Ross Chastain as a potential like championship 4 threat this year.
That wouldn't surprise me. I've seen that thrown out a little bit. I think it's a little early to be talking about that, and you can say Chastain, maybe he backed into this win, I think he was just in the right place at the right time in a way that's not quite, backing into it. That's backing into it. I think every restrictor plate win is backing into it.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I think if you're gonna call the Ross Chastain backed and win, I think you can call every restrictor plate race backed and win, because it's like, come on, that's that style of racing, I guess. But
yeah, and I will say too that you saw earlier in the race when he got lapped and just held it right in the middle, and cars had to go around him. And then when Byron was drafting behind Jones as well, and he would just kept getting squirrely and stuff, I think maybe these new cars handled a little better as far as being able to keep them under control. It seems like in the past, if a guy like that would have got bumped, he would have just been straight in the wall and then half the field goes out. So maybe this new car is also leading to them being able to maneuver a little better and not just wreck right away when the air is disturbed.
But you saw that too. You saw literally just the bump drive. These guys were not just lightly tapping like we've seen before. These guys were full on getting runs and then just slamming headlong into the back of the car. They were really testing that out. And more often than not, it actually worked. So I'm impressed because, like Cody said, back a couple of years ago, you'd have hit a bump draft that hard. Your car's toast, his car's toast, and everybody behind you's toast.
Yeah, and the bump drafting there is certainly real nice, but I think at the end of the race, nobody took those runs and made it to the front. They took those runs, ran into the back of the guy, hoped to get a push, and I think everybody just waited too long. It turned out that Jones made a mistake. He ended up not winning the race. Had Jones just held his line, he would have led the last, however many laps and been able to win that. I think part of that's inexperience on super speedways. I think you didn't have any of those guys up there, perennial super speedway winners. Part of it was you look at the end of that race, the last lap at least, Denny Hamlin ran out of gas. He's a typical super speedway aggressor. Joey Logano had wrecked out already. Brad Keselowski had a speeding penalty. Those are three guys who are going to create that run, create that madness at the very end of it. All three of them were out of contention. So I think that really affected what was a relatively clean end to the race. Would have been completely clean, but Kyle Larson, moved up a few lanes. Denny Hamlin didn't like that. It would have been relatively clean at the finish had it not been for that. So that was a fun couple of races, and I would be curious to see if Ross Chastain would be solidified as a Tier 1 driver. But once again, we don't have tire tiers this week. We'll get back to that next week. We don't necessarily need to sit here and talk about every single driver every single week. What we do have, though, is some draft or pass. We're going to single out a few drivers and see what we think of them here on our next segment.
5.5, 5 now, quarter, 5, 75, sold your way, 65
That's
and a
pretty
half.
cool.
21, Andy Rock, 21, Rockstar, 20.
I'm waiting for Elliot to give us a nice little and it's sold.
yeah, that's what we need. That's the segment we need on here. Just start bidding off drivers like that.
An auction draft.
Yeah, sorry about that. I went to click the video intro and my screen just kind of froze on me. Apologies to all our viewers out here. My Wi-Fi has been the greatest. We don't have the Grand Poobah Seth here to run the controls, so a little bit more off the cuff.
Live television.
But eventually a play interrupt guys having to narrate. But all right, we'll get back to it. Draft or pass. So the first driver I have here, the defending champion, Kyle Larson. Right now, he's the lowest Hendrick driver in the standings, believe it or not. Still doing fairly well, but he's the lowest Hendrick driver in the standings. His only win of the year came from a late restart, and his other teammate Chase Elliott may have won that race had he not bumped him into the outside wall there at Fontana. Is this a sophomore slump of sorts for Larson? Are we going to leave him be, or are we still picking him up as one of our favorites? What do we think?
I think I would still draft. It's still Kyle Larson, and I'm kind of not seeing that same energy that he had last season, because last season I think he kind of had a chip on his shoulder, but I just haven't really seen that energy or spark from him this year. But I've seen a lot of non-Larson things. How many times have you seen him wreck someone or wall someone? Or we saw that at Auto Club, we saw it at the Clash, we saw it last week. But I don't know, something's just off with him this year. But it's also Kyle Larson too, and any win or any type of streak or something could definitely get him rolling. And he had led 300 laps last year at Dover. I got to witness that. I got to see him lead about 300 and some laps, 2 stage wins, and didn't win the race. But I think also that Chevrolets this year are still relatively the favorites this season. So if he qualifies up front, I definitely could see him being a threat to win. So I'm going to go draft.
I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to say pass, and I'm going to pass until I see it from him. He was running up front last week, but we've talked about super speedway racing being so unpredictable anyways. Now, I will give him credit for actually being in the front at a super speedway race, which is something he's not used to doing in his life. But again, the mile and a half, I mean, we haven't seen very many traditional races this year anyways, but we just haven't seen much out of him at all, to be honest with you. And whatever spark he had last year, this new car and him are not speaking the same language. So until I actually see more sustained than just a good showing here, one win out here, because at this point, I think he won every single race and retroactively run every single race at this point last season. So, it's just a matter of, for Kyle, I want to wait. So I'm not taking the chance on him. And in fact, I didn't and maybe that was my downfall, but I didn't take a chance on him this week at Talladega.
Well, Rod and I don't disagree very often, but we will here. Like Jared said, it's Kyle Larson. How can you not draft him at this point? Hendrick has the best team by far, above everyone so far. Chevys have looked better. Larson is still Larson. He's good in any and all equipment he gets into. Maybe he's taken a little longer to adjust to this new car. But also, like Rod said, we haven't been to the cookie cutter mile and a halves yet. And I think that's where you're really going to see more of Larson time come back. And I think that, we haven't really seen it. Again, it's been a lot of different tracks. He was good at a super speedway, which we never see, but he's got a couple of decent finishes now with last week at Talladega. He finished good at Bristol Dirt. I think going forward onto some of these more, whatever you want to call them, again, cookie cutter tracks that he was really, really good at last year, I think we're going to see it from him there. And I don't think you can pass on Larson.
Yeah, definitely going to be tough to pass on him, but I do get it. I can't say that I don't. It was interesting. I didn't realize. I don't think he'd had a top 10 or a top 5 at all at Talladega until this past week, which I thought was curious. He's been around a while at this point. While we're on the topic of Hendrick Motorsports, another guy who we're familiar with on the podcast, my guy Alex Bowman. We know that I wear the purple-colored Ally glasses on the show, sort of. But he's showing early consistency this year. His biggest problem was not showing any consistency, getting the occasional win, and then, running 20th most of the time. He's still more often than not, I would say, is the 4th best running Hendrick car on the running order, but he is showing the consistency. He's in the top 5 in points. Are we buying it, or is he still just a hack? Cody, we'll start with you. What do you think?
This is probably the toughest one. I don't know. I'm going to go with buy just because, again, he's Hendrick. He's proven that he can put himself in the position, maybe taking over the title of closer from Kevin Harvick. So I think you got to roll with him. I still, like you said, he's probably 4th in the Hendrick lineup. I know that Elliot hasn't won this year, and there's been a big to-do about that, but I don't think he's been good. He's had some chances. He's had a few mistakes that have cost him, and I think his wins are coming. But that whole Hendrick organization is so solid from top to bottom. It's almost scary to think about how good they're going to be over the next so many years, because all those guys are relatively young, and they've got I think everyone but Byron is locked up long-term, and that's going to get done here soon, I think. So I can't pass on Hendrick cars right now, so I'm going to buy on Bowman.
It's funny because I'm going to pass on Larson, but I will buy on Bowman only because I've seen it out of Bowman, and we have seen it out of the Hendrick cars. And yeah, we actually saw it last week too, when they were all basically bunched together for a while and then got split up, but then found their way back together again. I mean, these cars are fast. It's not, you can't even count out any single Hendrick car in any single day, really, ultimately. But, for me, I love the 48 car, first of all. I mean, let's just say I'm biased because Jimmy Johnson was in that seat for a very long time. So watching the 48 car have any sort of success still pulls on my heartstrings. But, for Bowman, I think he's picking it up at just the right time. I think he's finding his stride while it's very hard for Kyle Larson to find his. So I'll buy into Bowman, and I'll buy into the potential that he actually is the one, I would say the one Hendrick driver that may have the best potential out of all of it, because Byron is there. I mean, he's toward the front just about every week, but again, it just hasn't seen the Hendrick cars cross the finish line as much as we're used to seeing them in the last few years.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy also. I mean, I saw what happened last year, Hendrick dominating Dover, and I'm sure since I'm going to this weekend, I'm going to see something sort of the same, kind of like what I saw at Martinsville, where I just got to see Hendrick dominate the whole race and that whole deal. But yeah, Hendrick's good, so they're probably going to dominate the race. And I could see, I think Bowman's probably about the third best driver. I think Chase Elliott's dropping down to the fourth for me.
All right, the next guy I have, a pretty curious case here too, I think, is Eric Almirola. He's very quietly having a pretty consistent year. If you take out the playoff wins, shaking up the standings and everything, he's 10th place in points right now. Quietly having a good year. Do he and Stewart Haas Racing have the continued upside in what's supposed to be his final year? Is he worth taking or is he worth dropping? Jared, what do you think?
Yes, only because he has been consistent this year, and compared to last season where it's like he was always in a wreck or always something was happening, he's actually shown somewhat consistency here. I think that he's going to be a guy who does win this year. I don't know whether it's next week or the week after that or sometime later in the summer, but I definitely see him winning at some point this year. But like you said, with consistency, that's what I look for, and he's definitely been on that tear, because whenever I'm watching the scoreboard and everything, I'm like, oh, Eric Almirola is doing decent. And I'm like kind of not used to that just because of how last season was, and you always see him in the 20s or 30s or being wrecked. So yeah, I'm gonna go with buy on draft on Eric Almirola.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and draft the 10 car as well. I've very much been impressed with him. Just like Jared said, like you start seeing the 10 car riding around in the top 15, riding around in the top 10, and you think to yourself, well, okay, where did he come from? One. And two, is he going to stay there? So I definitely have been impressed with the way he's been rolling lately. And, you know, a couple of bad luck things happen, but that's racing, right? I mean, you can't have 36 perfect races. You got to, at some point, suffer the downs and the dips of it all. So I'll give those and chalk those up to, you know, a couple, but he's been consistently around the front. And that's what you like to see, especially if you're talking about finishing positions for your fantasy points and all that stuff. So if he's constantly giving you the good stuff, I want more of that.
Yeah, I'm going to go buy too, or draft, because he's so consistent. And we saw it 2 years ago where he had, I think he had 10 or 15 races in a row where he, oh, you guys still got me?
We hear you.
We
can hear you. Your camera just disappeared there. I'm not sure.
Cody went incognito.
There we go.
There he is.
I'm back. Sorry. No, we saw it 2 years ago where he had a string of races where he was like top 10 for like 10 or 12 races in a row or something like that. Just Mr. Consistency. Like, he's not the guy that's ever going to lead all the laps or always be running first, but he does seem like he's always up in the mix at least. And so consistency wise, I have to draft him for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we see him keep doing well. It's always nice to see guys go out. I'm sure he won't go out on top. I don't see him winning a title this year, but nice to see guys go out while they're still having some success. Next guy, this guy's having some success, Tyler Reddick. He's next on my list, and you may think this is an obvious, smash that buy button. He's going to get that first win soon. He's run up front, but he's had a lot of bad luck. He's had a lot of finishes. Things have gone wrong at the end. Had the motor problems at Talladega. Are we buying into any of that we think Reddick may not be worth picking up, or is this just a smash the buy button for you guys?
That's a tough one. That's a good one to throw in there because, he's one where I want to draft him, but then, there's also that inconsistency that we're seeing. Is he going to get a wreck, or is he going to have some mechanical issue here, or it's either he's going to dominate a race and then have bad luck. I mean, Auto Club, I thought he was a surefire win right there, and then you see what happens. I mean, Bristol Dirt, I thought that was a for sure win, and then he backs it up the next week with a terrible finish, and then it's just all over the place, and I don't know. I mean, he could go out there, and he's the type of guy that I could see going out there leading 399 laps at Dover and then blowing a tire in turn 4 and losing the race that way. I think his time's coming. I just don't know win yet. I need to see a couple. I need to see a Ross Chastain type of deal where he gets a couple wins, and then I'm all right, this is someone I want to buy weekly, compared to right now where it's is he gonna win? Is he gonna wreck? What's gonna happen here?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat here. I don't really know which way to go. I mean, as far as is he gonna win a race at some point this year? Yes, buy, draft. I'll take that all day. But can you rely on him week in and week out to be consistent enough for you to put in a fantasy lineup or to play on DraftKings and stuff like that? I'm going to have to say no, because we haven't seen the consistency so far. And until he gets to that point, and maybe he does turn into what Ross Chastain is having this year, where he gets a win, finally gets over that hump, and then he just goes crazy. At that point, I'll be all in. But until we see it, I think you're going to have to pass him.
I made the mistake of betting on Reddick early as far as having him on my team, and it just did not pan out. And I thought to myself, every time a redraft came around, I thought, should I go ahead and try again, right? Do I want to get burned again? And I think the answer just kept coming back no. So I haven't necessarily bought into that. I know our buddy Go Bearcats in the chat right now talking about Reddick is overdue. He is overdue, my friend, and we're going to probably bet on him sooner rather than later. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those situations where who knows when that overdue is going to actually come to fruition. So unless you really feel racy, unless you really think you hit the setup, I'm passing on Reddick.
Yeah, he's going to get that win sooner or later, but riskier than you may think from how he's been running. Last grouping I've got is a pair of teammates, Eric Jones and Ty Dillon. I mean, Petty GMS, not really thought of as one of the top teams. I don't think that they will be for quite a while. They've got two talented drivers here, and they've had some decent runs. Ty Dillon was in the conversation at Bristol Dirt. Eric Jones, of course, probably should have won in Talladega. Are we buying this consistency with either of these guys? Or I know Seth certainly loves his Ty Dillon, as we heard a couple of weeks ago, but are we rolling with either of these guys, or is it not really worth it, even at what I'm sure is a lower price than most consistent drivers?
I'll take Eric Jones. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I'll buy Eric Jones, but I think I'm going to pass on Dillon. I need to see it more from Dillon. I mean, Eric Jones has proven he's a really good driver in top-tier equipment. He kind of got shuffled out at Gibbs there, but he's proven this season. I mean, we've seen it. I don't remember which race it was earlier in the season, Auto Club maybe, where he had a really good car and ran well, and he's been doing well. He should have won this weekend at Talladega. I think he regrets jumping up trying to block. He probably should have held his line, but I think he's got one coming. Maybe get that 43 car back in victory lane. Everybody loves to see that, but his consistency's been up there, so I'll buy on him. Dillon, we've seen it the last couple races here, but I still need to see more from him. I'm not fully sold on him yet.
He's sneaky. Eric Jones is sneaky. He's one of those drivers where Cody and I talked about it on our show at the beginning of the year, where when we started to talk about more of the 40 cars other than Bowman rather, then racing is good, because when the 43 car is good, the 42 car is good, stuff's happening, right? So for Eric Jones, I actually had him pegged as a long shot for the Talladega race last week, and boy, I was on my pit box, just thumping my chest going, this is it. We've got this. And then, of course, Kyle Larson did what he did. But, I thought it was great because I want to see Eric Jones do better, because he's one of those cars where I think he is better than you anticipate just because of his team as an equipment. But he's a better driver than you give him credit for. So, I'm definitely gonna draft. And then for Ty Dillon, it's just, you want to root for the guy, but unfortunately, when you do, nothing happens. So, you can only do it over and over again so many times before you realize it's probably time to stop. And I think at this point in the season, it's just time to stop hoping for Ty Dillon to do better.
Yeah, Rod pretty much summed that all up there. Like, Eric Jones is definitely severely underrated. I wish he was not on the team he's at, because I think that his potential is getting held back by the equipment that he's in. I mean, heck, he won Darlington and with Joe Gibbs Racing, and Darlington's not an easy race to win. And that was like a couple years ago too. So Eric Jones definitely, I think, is, like I just said, he's a lot better than he's advertised as. So I would draft him over Ty Dillon. I mean, Ty Dillon is just kind of like, if he gets a top 20, he gets a top 20, but if not, it doesn't surprise you. So that's kind of where I'm at on those guys. Like I said, I'll draft Eric Jones. I will not be drafting Ty Dillon.
Fair enough on all those picks. Can't really argue. Let's continue looking ahead to the next couple of weeks with the Horizon forecast.
Hey, Michael, it was only 20% chance of rain. I think we got all 20.
Hey, glad that one went off without a hitch. And shout out, as always, to Mr. Ray Dunlap there. So the next two races, we've got Dover and then Darlington right after. After we saw a couple of wacky tracks the last few weeks, I think that these ones they're certainly not cookie cutters, the concrete at Dover, the Monster Mile, and then Darlington, the Lady in Black. But I think they're good tracks to kind of, hit the reset button if you need to, and really good performance indicators to see where everyone is at this point in the year. Jared, we'll start with you. You're going to Dover. What are you going to be looking for these next 2 weeks?
I will be interested to see how the new car races on Dover. I mean, since with the new, we've seen good races at tracks that haven't put on good shows. I mean, we saw Auto Club was really good this year. Las Vegas was really good this year with the new car. I mean, Bristol Dirt was really good with the new car. The Super Speedways have been really good with the new car. So is Dover going to fall into that category? I'm hoping so. I'm hoping it's not like the last couple races where it's just a single file the whole way around and you're just waiting for something to happen and the only cautions you get are maybe debris or something. But I'm hoping we get something sort of like we got in the mid 2010s. If you watch some of those older races like the Kyle Larson versus Matt Kenseth from I think 2014 or 15, it's like one of those races, or even like the 2017 when Kyle Busch passed Chase Elliott late in the race, something like that. I'd like to see rather than someone just leading 300 laps or 100 laps and just running away with it there at the end. I'd like to see some sort of side-by-side type of stuff. Whether or not that happens remains to be seen, just because I went to Martinsville thinking I'd see some of that, and I just saw that. That's the only thing I'm afraid of. I hope it's not like Martinsville and it's like that, but we'll see. That's what I'm looking forward to at Dover, just to see how it races.
Yeah, so for me, this new car shakes a whole lot of things up, and you don't want to see somebody like Kyle Larson leading 263 laps and then just kind of calling it good for the day. But we've noticed though with this new car that there has been a lot more raciness in it. So, and it didn't matter which track you're on. It just seems like cars don't necessarily pull away from each other anymore like they used to. And even if they do, there's enough of a bunch up every once in a while due to caution, due to whatever, to where it takes a while for them to string back out again. I don't think we've seen very much lap traffic on like mile and a half or miles. Obviously in short tracks, you're going to get lap traffic. But even in Talladega, right? I don't know that there was people that were lapping each other than going down for accidents and stuff like that. So, maybe this car is keeping the playing field, as Cody and I like to keep saying, keep the playing field level. And at a track like Dover, where we're used to watching people run away from it, I'd like to think that maybe that doesn't happen. So, you give these guys a mile now as opposed to 2.5, 2.6, then, we'll see what kind of racing we get.
Yeah, agreed with what those guys said. Basically, we don't really know exactly what to expect. We haven't seen this exact style yet. But like Rod had said, we haven't really seen anybody just kind of run away with it to this point, at least. Martinsville would be kind of the only exception where we had guys lead a ton of laps. But even then, they didn't really pull that far away from the rest of the field. So I'm hoping this new car keeps the field closer together, keeps everyone bunched up a little more. Hopefully we see it be a little more racy like Auto Club. Even Richmond wasn't the best race, but it was a lot racier than it has been in the past. So and then we saw less action at a place like Martinsville where we've seen more action in the past. So Dover has been one of the less action tracks. So I'm hoping that will be the same as like an Auto Club or Richmond where we get more of the action. But it's tough to tell exactly what we're going to get until we see it.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen nothing but action this year with this next-gen car. I have a good feeling. I think that Dover really needs it in particular. Not that it's been a particularly bad racetrack. Used to have 2 dates, used to have a playoff on the schedule. Now I believe just this one. And they've changed up. Well, that race was sort of protected because it was one of the few that were kind of independently owned. They weren't in either conglomerate. Now they're owned by, I think it's Speedway Motorsports. Could be at risk of losing that date. So Dover really needs a good race.
Yeah, and that's a really key track too. If you look at where it's at in Pennsylvania or in Delaware there, you've got all those very populated states around there where a lot of people can get to it. So I think it's really key for NASCAR to have a good race there and keep that date so we can keep pulling in all those fans from those highly populated areas.
Yeah, I'll be biased here. Sorry, Rod. I'll be biased here. I think we definitely need to keep racing in the northeastern side of the states. It's a lot better than. It's nice to be able to drive 4 hours to a track rather than 7.5 down to a Martinsville, a Bristol, Richmond. Richmond's not that far, but still, this is like one of the first you could say in the true northeast side of the United States. So I definitely think hopefully Dover does put on a good date and put on a good show. I'm thinking with that Speedway Corporation deal, there's one of two things that are going to happen. Maybe they get lights, or maybe they get a playoff date back. So that's what I'm hoping.
Well, I think to do that, they need to have a tighter, like we were talking about, a tighter race. I mean, you can't have 2-second victories, 3.5-second victories at a race. And we haven't seen that this season. So, hopefully this gives us a nice close finish again, and Dover becomes exciting.
Yeah, I think those things that Jared mentioned, they'll happen if Dover has some good racing with the next gen. If they don't, I think maybe Nashville gets a second date or they just chop it off the schedule. I don't think anybody wants to see that. But in any case, as we keep looking ahead, we couldn't bring the betting guys on and not have some parking garage props, so we'll go to that next. All right, gents, what are some stuff that we're looking at with these upcoming races?
Well, Cody, I'll give the floor to you if you're ready to queue up some bets.
All right, well, let's just jump right into it. So I was looking at the odds earlier. Ross Chastain is plus 1,600 on DraftKings to win this weekend. Why? I don't understand. I mean, what more do you want from this guy? So that jumped off to me right away as just massive value. Like, I'm not going to look at his track history here because that hasn't mattered anywhere this year. He's in elite equipment. He's proven he can win. He's gotten over that hump of getting the win, and now they're just falling into place. So plus 1,600, I don't know how you can pass up on that. That's going to be the first thing I jump on this week while the value's there.
Yeah, and for me, like that Ross Chastain, I actually looked that way too, but I'm not gonna because I knew one of you guys were gonna have that. I was like, I gotta look elsewhere because Ross Chastain is gonna be a popular name right now.
Sorry to take the obvious one.
Well, it's Ross Chastain. The guy, he does nothing short of run up front this season and eat watermelons off the ground. Boy, he was digging into that bad boy. I love it.
Did you see he gave a burn-up piece of his tire and a piece of watermelon to the kid? It's like normally kids get the checkered flag. This kid gets a burn-up piece of rubber. And
then the kid even ate it. Like, it just got smashed on the ground. Yeah. Racetrack and everything. I was like, hell yeah, kid.
Get it. Get some. Yeah, he ingested some of Talladega. Why not? I'm going a different direction. And for me, the odds are close together. But Kevin Harvick's at plus 1,200 right now. And you can look at me all you want and say Kevin Harvick is garbage. But, okay, look, this guy's got his name cemented on so many different tracks for so many different things. And, in the course of his career, over the last couple of years, he's actually won here twice. But the dude has a string of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 top 10 finishes with 3 fourth-place finishes in a row, a couple of sixth-place finishes in there, and then those wins. I know it's taken him a while to get this car dialed in, this next-gen car. We've seen him struggle all season long. But over the last couple of weeks, I feel like it's started to get better. You started to see him run up front. You're starting to see him in the top 10. And all he needs is to get comfortable on a track. And maybe now that all the madness of Talladega, dirt tracks, we're about a third of the way into the season, now maybe he's starting to get a little more comfortable. And Kevin Harvick, on a track like Dover, where he's had a lot of success, 41 starts, over half of them are top 10 finishes. So, I mean, give him the opportunity to get in front, and maybe we see the first Harvick win of the season.
I certainly didn't realize Harvick had that much of a top 10 streak there. And I don't think he's terrible. I think he's just old. I think he's just past his prime, but those seem decent value to me. Jared, what do you think about both of those bets?
Yeah, I agree with that. Crazy the odds for Chastain. I mean, you'd think he'd be like a favorite now everywhere you go. Because like I said earlier, I mean, he's won on the super speedways, won on a road course. He did good on a lot of the 1.5 mile tracks. So yeah, that just baffles me. And Kevin Harvick, I'm still a Kevin Harvick. I think he's definitely going to get there at some point, like Rod said, getting comfortable. I mean, we have some couple tracks coming up here, like Dover, I think he's won at before, and Darlington he's won at before. So a couple weeks, maybe we see him start cracking off top fives and eventually get a win here.
Well, it's funny because this I think the bookmakers just don't watch the sport because Kyle Larson is a favorite.
And that's what was crazy last week is how favorited he was for as bad as he's been on super speedways. Now, he finally, I mean, I was all over fade him this week again, and yeah, he proved me wrong. But if I was given that chance tomorrow to do it again, I would fade him again. He hadn't finished better than 37th in 3 straight races at Talladega. So I just don't understand sometimes what these bookmakers are looking at, to Rod's point. And I think that's where, as a betting community, we can gain a huge advantage, is actually paying attention and knowing what's going on. And it's just like, this doesn't even make sense. Like, maybe Chastain doesn't win, but at the value you're getting him at, that bet is worth it no matter what.
Okay, maybe it's just the bookmakers lost so much money on Larson early in the year, because I don't think anyone's talking about him as a favorite. Goes out there and becomes the favorite. He made himself the favorite last year by the end of it.
Right.
All right, well, if you're placing any bets this weekend, certainly the best of luck to you. Hopefully our guys helped you out. Of course, those are the bets that are going to win. You know, we bring them up here. They're the best ones for sure. All right, so let's round it out with our Backroad advice, Backroad stories of the week. This week, let's keep it simple. We're a racing show. Let's talk about some of our favorite memories at racetracks, our favorite racetracks on the schedule for the Cup, or anything. Just some good racetrack stories, some good racetrack memories. Jared, let's start with you. What do you got for us?
I can talk about my Martinsville experience. I had 9 hot dogs. I had the famous Martinsville hot dog. Ended up getting 9 of them, and yeah, that was really good. I got them basically thinking that I would eat half here and then, kind of eat the second half, like maybe during a stage break or something, so I wouldn't have to go back out. But then it decided to, like, rain, snow, sleet, hail, whatever weather you want it to be, and we're waiting for an hour. Next thing you know, all the hot dogs are gone, and I was not getting back in line for it. So I think that was a good sign for me to stop at 9. But yeah, if anyone ever gets to Martinsville, the hot dog is the way to go. It has the hot dog, it has the meat sauce on it, it has some slaw on it, mustard, and onions on it. So definitely, you have to get the whole thing at least. You have to at least get one of the whole thing. They're only $2. Your wallet may go dry if you're a hot dog fan. And it was kind of cool at that track. You know that guy that announces the hot dog eating contest?
Yeah, I can't think of his name right now, but yeah.
I can't remember his name either, but they did for the driver intros that I'm sure they didn't show on TV. All the drivers that have previously won at Martinsville got an introduction by him. So that was the kind of cool thing that you probably didn't see on TV. You might have seen on Twitter, but being it live, I was like, this is because they were going through like the starting order, and it was just so random. And like then they were saying like Eric Jones is starting the pole. I'm like, all right, something's off here. And then I realized like, oh, okay, they're bringing out. Someone told me in the back behind me like, hey, they're bringing out Martinsville winners. I'm like, oh, that makes sense, because I'm like, yeah, I haven't heard Harvick, I haven't heard like Kyle Busch, I haven't heard any of the big guys who've actually won there. So Martinsville is a pretty cool track. It's kind of like a mini. It basically is like a mini Bristol. It's kind of set up. It gives me that kind of vibes with like all the parking around it and just how like the building structure is there. So definitely recommend checking out Martinsville. This year was the first time I was going, and I think I'm going to end up going in the fall just because I kind of want to actually see a Martinsville race unlike what I saw this spring.
Yeah, real
That's
cold, really characteristic for Martinsville for sure.
Coldest race I've ever been to in my life, so I can definitely check that off and say that, like, yeah, Martinsville spring, coldest race I've ever been to. Beat that.
Well, so I was stationed in upstate New York, and I lived in a little place called Evans Mills, and there was a little racetrack, a short track, just right off of it was literally, I'm not good at distances, which is why I talk about racing and I don't do it, but it was within earshot, let's say, of my apartment. And I remember Fridays and Saturday nights, I would open my window because the sound of those race cars, I would go to the races, but when I wasn't at the race, I would just open up my window and let the sound of the race cars kind of fill my living room or my bedroom or wherever I was at, because it was so comforting and so cool to hear just, late model cars just zipping around that track. And it was asphalt for a while, and then they went in and they made it a dirt track. So I remember watching races there on that dirt track thinking, this is really damn cool, because I literally was in my backyard. So I had a racetrack in my backyard that I could go watch a Friday night race whenever I wanted. I had my favorite drivers, and those guys' cars were just beat up to holy hell. It's like they grabbed him out of a demolition derby and just, threw an engine in him and said, okay, let's go around the track. So yeah, these guys, they all had so much fun, and it was just a unique environment to be in. And you want to talk about a cold race, Jared? That was a cold race because upstate
I bet.
is not warm no matter what time of year it is, even in the summertime. So yeah, I have very fond memories. And then just one more, I went to Sonoma this last year. Love that track, love that atmosphere. I mean, I'm going back again this year, but boy, I got to tell you, I got that date circled.
Is the wine as good as it's advertised out there?
I don't drink wine. I mean, I live in California. I'm surrounded by the damn stuff. I don't necessarily drink it.
Fair enough.
I'm sure it's good.
Yeah, man, those Martinsville hot dogs, that's on my bucket list. I haven't had a chance to make it out there yet, but when I do, that's I've been told that's one thing you can't miss. So I'm excited for that when I get out there. Man, I have so many racing stories. I started going to races when I was like 2.5 with my grandparents. We'd go every weekend to the local dirt track. So if you have a local dirt track and you haven't been out there, do it. You will not regret it. It's some of the best racing you're going to see, some of the best action ever. But a couple years ago, I got hot passes at Kansas Speedway. That's my home track, closest track to me. And just the experience of being able to be on the grid, like on pit road. We were allowed to be like right behind the pit boxes as they were changing the tires and everything. That experience is just so amazing. If you ever get the opportunity to get the hot passes and be down there in the action, there's nothing like it. It was just such a great time.
It really does sound fun for sure. And going to races that young, man, no wonder that you're hooked on it now for sure.
It's in my blood now.
So now the way you look at it, I don't live there anymore, but where I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, there's 2 racetracks nearby now. This at the local fairgrounds, this racetrack is called Bloomsburg Fair Raceway. They just held a wing sprint car race this past week. Both Alex Bowman and Christopher Bell was there. And this racetrack is, I believe, less than 10 minutes from my house, less than 10 miles for sure. And this racetrack, I always saw it sitting there going to that fair every year. And when I was growing up, they never did anything with it. And now that I haven't lived there for a few years, boom, it's hosting sprint car races with Cup Series guys. It's like, man, why couldn't you have been doing this when I was growing up living there as a teenager? But moving away from left turns and to going straight, my first job in high school was at a drag racing track on New Media Dragway, about 10 minutes away. So that was certainly a lot of fun and a heck of a lot of a different experience watching that. I really never knew how it worked when I was younger. I thought they drive straight. Whoever gets their first wins. There's so many semantics to it. A lot of characters at racetracks like that. So I worked there pretty much just for a summer, but certainly a fun summer it was out there at the drag strip. Well, this has been a lot of fun this week. Rod and Cody, let's direct the viewers. How can they get to your more specialized NASCAR betting podcast?
Absolutely. You can find the SGPN, the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, by downloading the SGPN app if you can get it out. Yeah, you can definitely find me and Cody there. I'll let Cody plug the Twitter, but yeah, find us there. We record on Wednesday nights. It's usually out about 8 or 9 o'clock Pacific time. So check for it on Thursday morning, or if you're a night owl, join us as soon as it's dropped. And hey, Mr. Go Bearcats, we can fade Hamlin every week. It's just not even a question.
I was just about to say he's a regular from our show, so don't worry. Tune into the NASCAR Gambling Podcast this week, and we'll be fading Hamlin like every other week, and it's been profitable all season for the most part. So don't worry about that. But you can find me on Twitter at Husker_Zeeb. Got a ton of stuff. I just had some NFL prop bets article just come out. I've been covering some F1 this year. That's been pretty fun. I hadn't really been into F1 before, so kind of getting into that on top of NASCAR has been great. Do a lot of NASCAR articles. Obviously, we have the NASCAR Gambling Podcast, so that's the place to find us every week. So, yeah, appreciate you guys having me on. I've had a blast tonight.
Yeah, it really was fun. Thanks a lot, Cody, for coming on. Before we get out of here, Jared, you got anything you want to plug?
Follow Twitter. If you guys are going to Dover, hit me up. I will probably be wearing a blue Kyle Busch Crunchy Cookie M&M shirt, so it won't be hard to miss. I will definitely make sure to probably wear one of these unnecessarily bright yellow hats, so definitely I won't be hard to spot. Definitely hit me up if you see me there.
All right. Well, and of course, on In Between Media, we've got the NASCAR content. We've got football stuff. You know, the draft is coming up. Seth couldn't make it because he's going to be on his way to Vegas for a draft party, in the morning. So a lot of fun there. You can always tune in Between Media for some of the best fantasy and life advice content. Thanks for watching. Shout out to everybody in the comments and everything like that. Sorry again for the technical difficulties, but we just push on through and keep on rolling down the back road. So thanks again for rolling with us, and we will see you again in 2 weeks' time for the next episode of The Backroad.